Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Sebastian Bleasdale, a game designer currently working with Karma Games. Sebastian's latest title, Wildscape, is currently on pre-order. Sebastian, welcome to the binge. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Lovely to be here, and it's great to see some enthusiasm about stuff which is happening in the world.
Hey, maybe I'm the one that's lucky to be talking to you, right? So, Sebastian, this is the first we've met, and I always get excited when I get to meet new people in the industry. There's so many people to meet, and my goal before we shut this podcast down is to meet every single one of the publishers out there, which means we're probably never going to shut this podcast down because the list of publishers and the list of designers is absolutely endless in this industry. But there's some pretty cool things you guys are working on with Jumail Juju from Karma Games. We're going to talk about that in a second. But before we get there, I know you've done a lot of game design, and I want to kind of understand a little bit about your background. So first of all, where are you located?
I'm located in the UK, in Windsor.
Oh, in Windsor. Nice. And then, so how long have you been doing game design?
My first foray in game design was at university. It's essentially I sort of kind of bought myself sort of kind of the first couple of games. First of all, bought Catan, which I absolutely loved.
Yeah.
Bought sort of Eupharates and Tigris, absolutely loved that. Then bought a game called Simply Cosmic, which, quite frankly, was not the game for me. But I wasn't deterred. I essentially sort of got that out and sort of got out my scissors and sort of kind of tried to build an extra board and build lots of extra pieces for it, and spent hours trying to make this glorious masterpiece, which was even worse, perhaps, than some kind of the original version of it. I'd managed to do absolutely nothing about to make it better. Anyway, so kind of that was my original foray, and sort of kind of after that, it all went rather quiet for sort of a few years till I sort of went out of university to move to Windsor, and then sort of I found it was a bit of a games desert there, so kind of couldn't find anybody to work with until a friend of mine said, "Hang on, Reiner Knizia works in Windsor. So maybe you should kind of join up with him and sort of kind of test some of his games." So I joined up there.
Was he
Sorry,
pretty
go.
big like at that time? So that was I think it's 20 years ago, right?
That was 20 years ago. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know how big he was generally. I think he was certainly big to me. You faced in Tigris, the second game which I bought, that was by him. That was my favourite game probably at the time. I absolutely loved it, and then sort of kind of having the chance to sort of kind of play with him was playtest some of his original games was absolutely delightful. The thing was kind of when I playtested with his games, then I sort of realised actually, sort of kind of the initial versions of the games, they're just rubbish as kind of the additional versions of my games were. Sort of, it's not just kind of sort of it's not a case that he sort of kind of just snapped his fingers, suddenly came up with a brilliant idea, and it was all perfect first time. It was very much, sort of kind of tried something there, found some interesting idea, and that changed bits, changed the other bits, kind of kept refining, and you could see how sort of kind of the games developed from sort of kind of a load of old rubbish, sort of kind of to something which was kind of the shining glorious as there was. And sort of the more sat and thought about, the more thoughts of actually my additional games did have some sort of kind of spark within there, and sort of as thoughts of I can do that, I can go out and sort of design my own stuff. And so I was basically sort of kind of doing some work with him, and then sort of as time went on, I thought sort of started actually sort of trying to create my own things going forwards.
And until a lot of our guests remember, we had Reiner Knizia on for our 400th episode. And what a treat it was to talk with him, and just hearing the number of games that he's already created that are in his portfolio. But he kind of took us a little bit behind the scenes of what he's currently working on, and just stacks upon stacks of games is really this kind of game design engine that's just cranking things out. But take me back to when you were doing some of this playtesting with back then. Like, what is the one title you can think of that you got to playtest before it hit the market that was one of his more popular ones? Was there one of the more popular ones that you had a chance to playtest before it hit the market?
Back at that particular time, I think kind of one of the first places I did was for Arm and Ray. So
No.
I kind of I saw sort of kind of the original version of the board, which was not this kind of very square sort of kind of set of squares. There's kind of very wriggly Nile going through there, and sort of lots of things. It's kind of all the various provinces were actually laid out in sort of much more sort of kind of glorious kind of layouts, kind of very much respecting the land. Much
Mhm.
less playable, but sort of kind of it's much more reflecting reality at that stage, sort of, Arm and Ray sort of kind of had lots of little soldiers and things like that, where sort of you're actually sort of kind of invading the other people's provinces, and that proved to be slightly too complex. And so, sort of, I was kind of part of the discussions there when sort of they're getting those ones out and saying actually we can place those with cards. I'm thinking back to it actually. I think sort of there's one card where sort of I specifically remember this one. There's a card which sort of allowed you to build an extra sort of kind of farm in there, and there's a
Mhm.
separate card which allowed you to sort of let's ignore the limit on farms when building them. And it was my suggestion there to kind of combine that into a single card to make it more workable.
That's
That's
crazy. How
so that
many
was kind of
people
one
could
of
say that they're there back like in the playtesting stages of some of his stuff? I think that is so crazy. Was that
yeah.
like an influence for you in terms of kind of almost kickstarting your journey into game design and giving you the confidence that you can create your own like your own games or
Not very much so. I mean, sort of, it's initially, well, I'll talk about this in two strands. So, sort of kind of, initially, sort of, when I was doing work with Reiner, then I was just doing the playtesting and things like that. About a year or so in, then sort of, basically, I sort of kind of started meeting up with Reiner separately in order to do sort of kind of, basically work on his designs a little bit more. So, sort of, the first games design which I started working on from scratch with him was one which has actually been reprinted fairly recently in the form of silos. So I
Mm,
think with Bitewing Games, so sort of kind of I was involved with very early designs there, and sort of kind of as the years have gone on, then sort of been involved in a lot of the designs which kind of Reiner did. So, for example, sort of kind of El Dorado, sort of kind of the
mm.
deck building game there. It's when Reiner put it together, then it was initially just kind of going along a single place track, and it was me who suggested, so actually what you want to do is you want to have this kind of hex grid where you can make your own things, you can make your own tracks and fit them all together, and then sort of work your way around them all. So that's kind of one strand of where I've sort of been doing games design and things like that. On the personal side, then sort of it's seeing the process from sort of the initial first idea to sort of final product there gave me the confidence to actually try out sort of various ideas. The initial games, as most initial games ideas are, were terrible. You kind of need to spend time learning the craft to say and get to work out your way through it. First, after about sort of kind of three or four failed attempts, I think my first one, which I really felt confident in, was on the Underground, which was kind of track building game, and sort of
Mm.
that was the first one which really sort of kind of clicked with me, and sort of kind of managed to click with sort of kind of the people I was playing it with, and sort of essentially some of the experience which I had kind of doing stuff with Ryan meant that I actually had the confidence to kind of see it through and say actually some kind of I'm fairly sure I can get this into a publishable state, which ultimately it did.
That's crazy. How many publishers have you worked with now?
Um, Probably about sort of kind of a dozen or so in one form or another. Some very much I took the model which I worked for very much from Reiner. Essentially, so I tried to
Yeah.
design lots of different games, basically some kind of things which capture my interest, and I tried to find the publishers who sort of, might specialize in that particular area, might find that particular thing interesting, and then sort of let them sort of handle the difficult work of trying to sort of sell the games to the public.
How many games do you have published now?
That's about it depends whether you count expansions or now not. I think about sort of over a dozen if you count sort of kind of if you ignore expansions.
Yeah.
And if you add expansions, then you have sort of handful of extra things there. Certainly, sort of the kind of there's various expansions for Keyflower and sort of kind of the variants on that, and sort of kind of the extra little promo cards and things like that. Certainly, sort of kind of bulk up my sort of the content which I have on the Board Game Geek list of sort of things which got published.
Oh, it's amazing. And so is this like a full-time job for you now, or do you have a day job to the side of this?
I've got a day job. Yes, this is very much sort of kind of passionate sort of kind of hobby rather than sort of full time side of things. Um, it's essentially sort of it's I've got sort of how do you describe it? I worked as an actuary, which not many people know about. It involves of working out how long people will live or how likely people are to have accidents and things like that. So the sufficient amounts of money can be set aside for sort of to pay their pensions or
Hmm.
to sort of pay the life insurance things. Uh, but to take it a step further, even away from the direct kind of its view of usefulness in that I'm kind of essentially in the research team for my particular company. And so I'm the person telling the actuaries how to advise kind of the people looking after the money, how much they should invest. So, you have these kind of descriptions of how useful a person is, kind of a frontline person kind of educating people or some kind of helping them or selling them stuff. I'm about some kind of 4 or 5 layers back, so essentially sort of advising how to kind of get the pensions for all these people to work sensibly.
Do you find you're
So
gamifying this job?
it's surprising how sort of kind of much overlap there is between them. I mean, sort of in both cases, it's in my day job. Then what I'm trying to do is essentially take all the legislation and all the requirements and try to put it into some sort of very sensible way for people to help people understand it and make it sort of easy to use and sort of kind of it's essentially streamlined sort of kind of how people are interacting with it and making it as easy to understand as possible. And actually, games are very much the same sort of thing. You're trying to take this kind of complicated set of decisions and trying to streamline this into kind of a smooth, easy, sort of way of understanding it. So I find it's using very similar skill sets, although sort of the subject matter for the sort of the games design is obviously considerably less dry than sort of the day-to-day
Sure.
work.
Do you find like, and often when I'm talking to people, there's usually transferable skills that they can take from their day job and bring into the board game design or board game publishing industry. What are some of the skills that you found that's kind of helped you with your journey on the game design side?
Very much the mathematical side, the
Yeah.
understanding of the probabilities and things along those sorts of lines. Actually, actuarial science is very much about sort of, trying to take a whole load of data and then sort of identify the signals of lingering through that. And I can translate a lot of that into sort of the games design to try to essentially understand sort of how everything fits together
Hmm.
and just get a genuine appreciation of sort of what people are likely to be doing and sort of how best to harness that and also how best to sort of frustrate that because a lot of games design is about sort of kind of finding the interesting areas of friction and kind of forcing people to confront sort of the things that they want to do but they can't quite manage to do and sort of fight their way through that.
That's amazing. The when now it just so I want to make clear for the audience. So there's Karma Games is the publisher that you're publishing this game with, right? Or you've designed this game with Jumail Juju, who we've had on the podcast, quite frankly, I think about a year and a half ago. Um, but from a design standpoint, how did you end up connecting with Karma Games? Like, how did the two sides come together on this particular one?
Well, Wildscape is one of these ideas which has been quite a long time in development. I think it was about over a decade ago. So
Oh, wow.
I played Trajan, which also has kind of a Mancala bundle, very different to the one which I had. And so essentially, I was speaking to another designer friend about sort of the Mancala bundle, and so we both came to the conclusion Trajan is a great game, but there are other ways in which kind of the sort of Mancala bundle could work even better.
Hmm.
So my friend Seth sort of ended up using that in a game of his called Crusaders.
Yep.
So Thy will be yours. I think that's the one anyway. And sort of I basically sort of took it and then got sidelined for quite a few years trying to kind of make this work. It's well sidelined with other games, and then sort of about a few years after that, I tried to put it into a railway game, which didn't work entirely successfully. But then some kind of which we then also replaced there. But I still had confidence in this Rondel mechanism.
Hmm.
Around that sort of time, so Duma was thinking about sort of what other games his company might want to produce. He'd had great success with Clans of Caledonia and was thinking about sort of what happens next. And so we met up at Games Fair, and he was essentially saying some kind of really like some of your games. have you got anything appropriate to kind of show to Karma Games, because I'd be very interested in doing it. And I was sitting there thinking, so I don't yet, but I have got this really great idea for a Wandle, and I've got a
Mm.
pretty good idea. And so essentially I sort of agreed with him that if I managed to find something with that particular Wandle idea, then I'll give him a shout and see what happens. Then sort of kind of I was all set to go forth and do something about it, and then COVID hits. So sort of it's suddenly sort of kind of my free time went away because I was trying to look after my two small children, sort of kind of while the schools were shut and things like that. My playtest just disappeared away because I needed to sort of kind of keep away because kind of the bubble system and stuff like that, which was in place in the UK. And so as the restrictions slowly lifted, then I met up with a friend of mine and sort of started playtesting the initial versions, and then sort of essentially sort of got to a certain stage where sort of kind of had this half-formed game. The Rondel part of it worked really nicely. The rest of it was, frankly, slightly more ropey.
Hmm.
And was trying to work out what to do next. And the thoughts of I've spoken to Jim about this before. I'll have a chat with him because kind of if he wants to publish it, then he's probably going to have a vision of kind of the sort of thing which Karma Games wants. And if I'm about to make a load of changes anyway, I may as well see what kind of his thoughts are, and we can kind of try to form something together which will kind of work for both of us.
Oh, amazing. The when I one thing we're gonna see when we get into the kind of this game and the different mechanisms you have, and you talk about the rondo and so forth, is game design is often taking different mechanisms that you've experienced across different games, different genres, and finding new ways to combine them, right? To
Mm.
create something new and fresh. And it's been so interesting in this industry to see how each generation of games is getting better and better because it's taking different combinations, permutations of those that came before them and finding new ways to kind of arrange them. Like Arc Nova obviously is going to be an influence here, right? And you know, or classic tile laying games and things like this. So it's kind of seeing how these things are kind of put together to create this different experience. And I think you've done a really cool thing here. We're going to show on screen some of the design, quite frankly. And I imagine when you're doing your prototypes, I mean, this is pretty polished what I'm seeing on screen here. How polished was it before he kind of handed the baton off to Juma?
It was considerably less polished. I'm very much a believer in the philosophy that if you're not prepared to sort of kind of rip up your entire prototype and reproduce it sort of kind of every couple of playtests, then you're not going to be brave enough to actually sort of make the changes that the game needs.
Yeah.
Essentially, so everything is very much sort of designed around being able to sort of kind of reproduce it fairly simply, being able to scrap things, move things around, scribble on things, and change that and so forth. It's the graphics are very much kind of the last thing which I try to sort of include on in the games. It's yeah.
Was there anything functionally that he changed when he put together kind of the development of this? Was there anything where he's like, I think I want to change this function or change this rule or anything like that?
There were a number of refinements which we had at the
Mm.
last stage of the process. So the game was signed sort of early in 2025, and then sort of in some ways the kind of design process went to overdrive at that point because suddenly I had sort of kind of a dedicated team in Karma Games who were sort of coming up with ideas and saying we could improve this bit, we could improve that bit, and
Yeah.
so forth. And I was essentially trying to sort of listen to what they're trying to say. Let's see which ideas had merits, see which ideas I needed to say, actually, that bit is load bearing, so kind of that bit is not going to change. You're just going to kind of break more things than you realize there. The key ones which we ended up changing were sort of essentially the way that the cards were drawn. So sort of it's is it worthwhile talking a little bit about the game first of all to kind of give people a
Sure, why
structure
don't we
to
do that?
understand what we're talking
Why don't
about
you
then?
walk me through essentially how you play this game, what it's about? Let's go through it.
Sure. So the game is about trying to sort of build sort of an African landscape. So kind of there's blighted ground, and you're sort of trying to rebuild sort of, nature there. It's essentially building a wildscape. And bring back all the animals and sort of getting the animals and things like that. And so the thematic element there's been a strong desire of mine. It's one thing where sort of, essentially if you don't kind of worry about it in the scoring, it's not really part of the game in some senses, in my view. And so therefore sort of, all the scoring is pretty much done through the animals which you're getting there, either in the form of sort of herbivores, various kind of predators and things like that. The actual game itself is at the heart of it is this Mancala rondel, which I was talking about previously. You've got a rondel where you select one of the 9 segments, and that segment gives you, first of all, a little tile, land tile, which you can place on to build up your landscape with. It's, it gives you sort of a number of energy tokens, and it gives you the actions which you can spend those energy tokens on.
Mm.
At Once you've taken those particular actions, though, then sort of, you take all the energy tokens you used and you Mancala them round. So you put the first token 1 space clockwise, the second 2 spaces clockwise, the third 3 spaces clockwise, and so on. And that means that sort of, this particular space you've just taken, all the energy's gone out of it, which means people are no longer sort of kind of, as it's no longer as compelling a space for people to go, and you've kind of, added extra energy to all the other spaces. And essentially, that's the heart of the game: the balance between some kind of, getting the tiles which you want to get, which are often not just the ones space which just turned up with no energy, getting the amount of energy you want, and getting the specific actions you're after.
I think it's very
That's
cool too, the terrain too. Can you talk a little bit about the terrain? Because you can actually stack your terrain as you go, right? So you can kind of build up as well.
the train. I think you're not building upwards there, so kind of you're building outwards. So
Okay.
the various terrain tiles are hexagonal ones, which you place onto some kind of, at land tiles, which you also acquire during the course of the game. And some kind of, the way that you're trying to build some, large habitats which you can bring various herbivores into. These herbivores in turn sort of, determines of, whether you can get predators into the right places, because predators have got specific requirements. They need particular sort of combinations of herbivores to cuddle up to. And different various other there are various other cards, such as the primate cards, which go into specific locations in the landscape
Hmm.
and things like that. Now, one of the key features which Karma Games introduced, going back to sort of the previous bits that we're talking about, is how exactly you're acquiring the cards. So in the initial version, which I submitted to them, I just had a huge pile containing all the possible cards which you might want. Each turn you were grabbing cards, you're just taking a couple of cards, choosing one of them, discarding one of your cards. And so there's a lot of focus on filtering through the various cards and things like that, which you might have, and hopefully getting the ones which you're after. That's Dreamer thoughts concluded quite rightly. I think that's of, actually players are going to sort of, enjoy the game more if there's
Hmm.
less random chance there. And so sort of, set up the little sort of kind of tableau that sort of, we now have in the game, where sort of you've got the different types of cards. You've got predators and primates and the fauna cards all separate, and you can choose one of the 3 cards available there and take that into your hand, rather than having this sort of kind of, process of just filtering through lots of cards and hoping that what turns up will actually be the one thing that you want.
Got it. So like on screen, I can see like some of these hex tiles seem like they're almost 2 layers thick. So is the tile itself thicker, or is there, can you like re-terraform certain areas in your overall map that you're building?
Not quite sure. I can't see the screen at the moment, so it's a
And
bit
so what's
hard
in
for
the
me to
box? It's all right.
try
It
and
could
translate that.
it's all right. He could have just
That's,
done this for the photography. I mean, the photography looks fantastic on this page. I think that the challenge I would put out to any designer or budding designer, someone who's looking to kind of think of how to get started, I would suggest take your 4 favorite games that you play all the time. Take your favorite mechanism, like what you find most interesting about each of those games, and see if you can create something new using those 4 mechanisms. Yeah, I think that as a challenge, that's something that all of us should be trying to do, because what I think you've done very brilliantly here, as you've explained it, and as I'm looking at the visuals on the screen, kind of matching up while you're talking, is you've done exactly that. You're like, okay, that's a very interesting mechanism over there. I'm going to use that. Now with this one over here, I like the way these guys did that, so I'm going to use that, take that over here, and there's another one over here. And now I'm going to over theme this. So I'm going to put these together into something new that kind of works. And then we're going to add a new theme to it. And it is so clever what you've put together here. What is the playtime? I'm just curious.
playtime, it's about 30 minutes a player.
Yeah,
if you're sort of kind of good at playing it. I mean, sort of on the first few games and things like that, you're probably going to be spending a certain chunk of time trying to understand the rules and get
sure.
up to speed with things. So obviously that'll be a bit longer.
It definitely
I
has
think
some Earth
that's
vibes to it as well. Yeah.
I think that's sort of kind of what you're saying about the taking various mechanics from different games is very true. It's what I'd expand that to is more sort of find something which is interesting, which kind of may or may not have been done, and see what you can do with that. I mean, sort of one thing which when I was starting out designing games, I talked
Hmm.
about bits about so on the Underground was my first game. And that was very much a game where I was looking at sort of kind of all the railway games in the market and saying sort of there's nowhere which really sort of kind of takes railway games and says actually sort of kind of that we care about sort of kind of where all the crossings are, how you get from one line to the other in the
Mm,
way that sort of kind of the Underground network does it. I was basically sort of, the idea came to me when I was kind of on the Underground, sort of coming home from playing games with a friend of mine,
yeah.
and we just played a railway game there, and I was just kind of looking and thinking, sitting on the Underground, thinking kind of, here's this map, here's this glorious map. Why wouldn't people create this particular map sort of kind of in a railway game? And essentially, on the Underground was built from sort of saying, well, somebody needs to create this, and I may as well be the person to do that because I'm the person here now thinking about it. Or similarly, sort of kind of Keyflower was kind of very much built on sort of a bidding mechanism which I hadn't seen before, where sort of people sort of kind of slowly bid upwards with meeples
Mm.
as sorts of kind of essentially this deserves to be in a game in some form, and sort of everything else is built from there. So yes, it's just very much a case of finding a unique idea and then sort of kind of finding other things around it which will fit it properly and sort of seeing where you go.
It's like we say, I have my buddy always says, iterate. He goes,
Mm,
iterate versus innovate. Because if you go too hard on creating all new, then you lose the audience because you
mm,
lose the familiarity, and it's tough for them to kind of use their shorthand to kind of get up to where you're at in terms of just
mm.
starting the game. So if you can do what you're saying is take different mechanisms from different games, apply a unique theme, but then if there's one thing that you can kind of put in there that gives it its own kind of unique hook or something that's different that hasn't been done before, that allows the generation that comes after this one to now build off of that, right? And if we're constantly iterating forward, we get these new ideas and new ways to do things. I mean, I'll take one of my recent games, Survivors of Venus.
Mm.
I took the if you look at was it Fantastic Factories? So they're little mini boards for playing, putting their for dice down. I use that. Barren Park. I took the polyomino placement for Barren Park, and at the end when there's a roll off, I took that from Favor of the Pharaoh, and I put those three
Mm.
things together. And then the a theme was you've got miners that mine Venus in the future, and they've crashed, and you're trying to find survivors, right? New theme, three different mechanisms, and then of course we had some iterations in there that we found were kind of unique to our game that was new, but it's taken the influence from these others and saying, okay, well that hasn't really been combined with that before. What happens if we put those two things together? Oh, wait a second, now here's something new. It's a new experience
Not
that
totally.
no one else is doing. So I find it's awesome. I love it. I geek out over this stuff all the time. I do want to acknowledge that with Juma, he wasn't able to join us for this episode. But what's unique about this campaign specifically, and I'll put links in the show notes so people can come and check it out. He's doing a pre-order directly through the Karma Games website. So very much like the Stonemeyer model, he's moved off platform, right? So off of Kickstarter, off of GameFound, and he's doing direct to his own audience in terms
Mm.
of his crowdfunding and pre-ordering, which I think is brave, but also it's awesome to see yet another publisher take this path and say, you know what, we're going to cultivate our own audience. Sure, we're not going to get maybe the fresh eyeballs I'm going to get from someone just randomly finding us browsing through Kickstarter, but we've got such a massive community that we started building up that there's efficiencies and there's rewards for our audience by sticking into our platform. So I am going to encourage the audience to go to Karma Games and check out his pre-order that he set up here. All the visuals are there, same as you would have on Kickstarter, but you're doing the pre-order directly through their site, which I think is cool. I love seeing this kind of approach on the back end, right? On the publishing side, I geek out on that side as well because I'm a publisher. So anytime I see people do new things or take these brave steps, it's awesome to see as well. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out before we continue on because it is important to acknowledge. All right, so
It is,
getting
yes. And just briefly saying, so
sure,
I think that's Kickstarter is very helpful in many ways
yeah,
because it forces people to front loads of kind of a lot of the considerations which kind of they basically need to make sure have happened. I think
yeah,
it's been really great for the board games industry because kind of suddenly sort of people have got access to this, and but also they're allowed to kind of do the Kickstarter, and they're forced to kind of think about all the marketing and things like that. And if they don't succeed in all the marketing bits like that, then there's less of a problem because kind of they've got the safety net of Kickstarter failed. Oh, well, never mind. I have not lost my house. Kind of printing 6 million copies of this particular game. And now so kind of I need to kind of sell them one at a time for the rest of my life.
yeah.
So I think Kickstarter's really great there. I think there's also some kind of scope for people saying actually the amount of work I put into Kickstarter doesn't need to go through Kickstarter necessarily. So kind of we can still do the same work, just kind of without the Kickstarter bit.
That's a good point. It does take guts, right? Because if a game is a flop, you have that protection on Kickstarter of like, okay, well, we just don't make it. Or if you're doing a pre-order system, in for a penny, in for a pound, right? Like
Yeah.
it's you're moving ahead. So that's very astute. What's coming up next for you? So now that Wildscape is out there, which again looks gorgeous, and I'm going to put it in the show notes for people to check out. I mean, this is something, especially if you like some of these games like Ark Nova and so forth, Earth. I mean, this is right in that wheelhouse, and I think people are going to absolutely love it. I think one of the reviewers, might even been Rondo, runs through it, was saying like this is going to be another nomination for best game of the year from his perspective.
I think
So
one was saying that, yes, I was
yeah,
very
so
pleased
congrats on
with
that. That's
that.
high
Yeah.
praise, obviously. What are you working on other games? Like what's going on right now with you? Like what's the next steps?
I'm also always working on other games. It's this that the only one which is kind of in the publisher pipeline at the moment is potential reprint of my game Lemmings,
Mm.
which will be hopefully coming out with Sunny Bird in Japan at some point in the next few years. Other than that, it's kind of mainly just still trying to finalize things for other publishers' interests and seeing which publishers want to get them.
How many games do you have kind of waiting in the wings that you're just actively approaching publishers with?
Um, about half a dozen at the moment.
Wow. Good for you. That's awesome. It's so exciting, eh? I know it's a grind doing the pitch circuit.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, when you've got the resume behind you like you have, that becomes easier as you go, right? You start having publishers actually reach out to you saying, "Hey, is there anything you've got that I can take a look at?" Because your
Yeah.
reputation precedes you, and I think that's a dream for most designers to get to that point.
It becomes
Let's,
easier getting your foot in the door, certainly.
yeah,
It still doesn't necessarily mean you find the right link with the publisher. So you still need to find the game which they want and which kind of you can produce. So that's
it's
the,
still
the
the
challenge
grind.
remains.
Even Reiner is still like has a back catalog waiting to kind of match up with people, right? So,
Yeah,
but man, Sebastian, this has been an awesome talk, and I am so excited to see where you and Juma land on this. And I'm definitely going to be watching you going forward for your future designs, my friend.
thank you very much.
All right, buddy, you take care. Cheers.
Lovely. And you.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.